Okay, so I make a fair few jokes, both on this channel and in real life, about not really understanding story structure. But that's not strictly true. When I decided to get serious about becoming a professional author, yes, this is me being serious. Serious. I started looking into storycraft, mostly through YouTube channels, and I am going to give a shout out to Hello Future Me, or Tim Hickson, who has just brought out a book at the end of, well, May. I say just, like it's not August, but brought out a book at the end of May, which I tried to buy, but then Amazon did not send me the book. So that was a thing, and then I also looked at a couple of authortubers and a very select few books, which I have on my shelf down here. I'd like to point out that the reason that I tend to use things like YouTube channels is because dyslexic person standing here talking at you, and it has a huge impact, my dyslexia has a huge impact on the way that I access these materials, so I've got to go with the route that is both cheap and accessible to me, which is, conveniently, YouTube. I ended up getting a little bit stressed out that both in my outlining stage and when I read back through my projects, I couldn't figure out what my inciting incident was, or what kind of structure I had, or was gonna have, or was gonna end up writing. Like, was it gonna be a circular ending? Was it gonna be a 3-act structure? Was it gonna be Freytag's pyramid? By the way, what is Freytag's pyramid? I don't know. But I got to the end of my first finished manuscript, and I finished editing it, and I realised, as I got beta readers to go through it and so on and so forth, as I got to that kind of stage of it, that figuring out my story structure didn't really matter. It doesn't. It does not matter. At least not strongly. If you don't know what your story structure is, that's okay. Because here's the thing. Likelihood is you have read enough books and watched enough movies and TV shows, and I've played enough role-playing games on console, and I've kind of osmosised story structure. One of the reasons that people recommend that writers read is to start learning story structure on an intrinsic level. You don't necessarily have to be able to label each part of your book, as long as you have a generic understanding of story structure. When you're a pantser, trying to work from an outline from the get-go is a bad idea. Which means that story structure is kind of irrelevant when you are, especially when you're writing your first draft. And if you use an outline to structure your novel after you've got a first draft done, which is what I do, it changes things. It means that even if you can't lay down one particular inciting incident, you have a general idea of the area the inciting incident is, and therefore a general idea of what it could be. It's like in Mary, I realised the inciting incident isn't just one incident, it's two very close together. Most importantly, the big secret, the big thing that nobody tells you about story structure. Most of them are essentially the exact same one, but called different things. I've seen at least 4 different Lord of the Rings analyses that use 4 different types of story structure. I think it's all a lie. So with all of that in mind, how do you use story structure to your advantage, and when? Redrafting. If you use my process, which I have yet to explain, so that would be a trick and a half, you outline after you have a full draft, or possibly 2 full drafts, like a full redraft. Once you know the story in pretty much its entirety, and you're about to redraft, or redraft again. This is when you can easily figure out if your ending mirrors your beginning or not, because you know both the ending and the beginning of your story, and you can compare and contrast. You can see, what kind of character arcs you have, because you have the full thing and you can start fixing it up. Ultimately, redrafting is the point where you can look at everything from, it's basically where you zoom out from your story and you can start looking at it from a really wide angle lens. You can start seeing it from this faraway perspective that drills everything down into these neat little lines. Or, if you're like me, it does nothing of the sort. You go with post-it notes, they rain down upon you because it's terrible at sticking to your wall, and you kind of just go from there and hope that you've managed to handle everything. And then you hand it to your beta readers and they tell you you've forgotten them. Again, dyslexia. Of course, if you are an outliner, I don't know whence you came. I don't know how you got here. If you are a plotter and an outlining related person, if you love to outline, you probably want to put your story structure in quite early. But to be honest, if you can't manage to do that, or you haven't managed to do that in an outline, don't stress too much about it. Each book is different. You will treat each one differently, and each one will have its own impact and its own way of being told. And if the reason that you're here is because you're worried, because every time previous to this you've outlined within an inch of its life and now you don't know what you're doing because you can't find the structure, or it doesn't match the structure that you tend to use, it's okay. I'm not going to tell you to go with the flow because I feel like that's just going to stress you out a little bit more. But ultimately, you can find that structure organically rather than imposing it on top of it. So, take some time to learn your story before you try and put a story structure on it. And be aware that they're all the same. All story structures. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Think about subscribing to my channel. I try to post every Friday. If you want to read my short stories, they're all available completely free on nopuddles.wordpress.com. If you'd like to stay up to date with my life, my work and my bunnies, you can follow me on social media. I am on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter as NoPoodles. And if you would like to support me and what I do, there's a link to my Ko-fi account in the description bar below. But I got to the label issue. If you nah, blah. Here's the